Hey everybody, I'm Alan with Dad's Playing Games, and this is the 10th video for our solo campaign in the game of Frostgrave. Be sure to check the details below for links to our other Frostgrave content, including the introductory video that explains the house rules and restrictions I've placed on myself. And there you'll also find timestamps in case you want to jump ahead or behind to a specific part of the video. In this battle, you'll be seeing Caltropos the Illusionist against Gloven the Sigilist as they square off in the 10th and final scenario from the core rulebook called the Complex Temple. Now be sure to hang around to the end or check the timestamps to jump to the end of the video where I will be discussing what's coming up next for the 4 warbands that I've been using for the solo campaign now that the core rulebook is complete. The Complex Temple scenario sets up like a standard battle, except that instead of placing treasure tokens, you place one of these stone pillars or columns instead. Whenever a soldier comes into contact with one of these structures, they enter combat against it. The column has a fight plus 0, and if the soldier loses, it takes damage like normal, but if it wins, it immediately gains possession of a treasure token. And each one of these columns only contains 1 treasure token. I will say that this scenario brought up a few rules questions, so there will be some minor rules checking that I'll do during the video in case you, the viewer, had similar questions with the scenario. The last time these 2 warbands met up was in the Worm Hunt scenario, and in that battle the giant worm appeared on Gloven's side of the table and left his warband pretty tied up, and as a result, the battle ended up being kind of even. Both teams ended up with 3 treasures. In this battle, they have these stone pillars to deal with. So as you watch, you'll get to find out if these pillars cause any problems, if they end up taking out soldiers left and right. And also, as you watch, you'll get to find out if all of these ranged soldiers these 2 warbands have, if they're actually able to hit anything with their arrows and crossbow bolts. And with that, we will now take a look at these 2 warbands, and you'll get to see what they've been up to since they were in the Frozen City last time. And then after that, we'll get right to the battle. Caltropos and his team walked away from the Well of Dreams and Sorrows with a lot of loot. However, their newly acquired tracker was killed in that battle, and their warhound was left badly wounded. So they immediately brought the injured animal to a healer and left him there to recover. They sold the Staff of Casting they'd found in that last battle, as it strengthens a spell they don't know, and they also sold an extra grimoire of Raised Zombie. While at the black market, they found a suit of light armor plus 1, which they purchased for their treasure hunter / swordsman. And while at the local pub, they met a barbarian and a ranger that they hired to join their team. Back at their base, the spellcasters studied to improve their casting of Imp and did some training with their new barbarian to increase their health. Before the battle, Caltropos gave the gloves of strength that they'd found to their knight, and the illusionist heads to battle 5 experience short of level 10, and with 320 gold crowns in his vault. Gloven's warband suffered their worst defeat so far in the battle at the haunted houses. They had to carry 3 wounded soldiers back to their base and spend most of their gold crowns healing those soldiers. Their ranger killed Krell the Red in that last battle, earning a name for himself, so this is now Tolthwain the Hunter. Gloven and Strog spent some time training with their soldiers and used their 1 level up to increase their fight by 1. They also wrote 2 scrolls at the end of the last battle, giving a scroll of Power Word and Telekinesis to Strog the Apprentice. Gloven enters this battle at level 8 with 110 gold crowns in his vault. For out-of-game spells, starting with the Illusionists, usually they like to cast Fool's Gold, but that will do nothing for them this battle, the way the treasures are set up. So they'll start out with Illusionary Soldier, Caltropos casting on a 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, Success. They can only have one illusionary soldier, so that is that. They will both attempt to raise zombies, starting with Caltropos. They have a +2 because of their crypt or their workshop. So that is a 10 total. That's a failure. Moot will attempt. He has a -2 because he's an apprentice. And 6. That also fails. No zombie to start anyway. Moving to the Sigilists, their one out-of-game spell is Familiar. We'll start with Gloven the Wizard. 18, he needed a 12, that's successful. And for Strog the Apprentice, 16, he needed a 12, that's a -2, so that is still successful as well. So both Gloven and Strog will start with 2 extra hit points because of Familiar. The battlefield is all set up. Now instead of placing treasure, it says to instead place 6 columns. So we have those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now it just simply says to place those instead of treasure. So I think that technically you are supposed to, the players should be able to place those wherever they want as they would a treasure token. But whether that's the case or not, I wanted to just set it up so it looks like this was some structure that used to be here. So the soldiers will have to attack those to get the treasure tokens out of them. I've rolled for player edges. We've got one side here and one side there. And so now we'll roll to see who deploys first. Highest number will do that. All right, 16. Caltropos, the Illusionist, will set up first. The Warbands are all set up, starting with Caltropos over here. We have him with an archer, their barbarian, their treasure hunter, a tracker. This is their real knight, and this is their illusionary knight, so the other team does not know that it's not real. Well, he knows one of them is not real. Over here we have their other archer and their ranger. And back here we have their marksman and Moot, the apprentice. On the other side of the board, I'll come behind them because otherwise there's a lot of shadowing on them. But we have Gloven the wizard with his knight, their ranger, a tracker, a treasure hunter, and their barbarian. Over here they have their lone archer. And on this side we have their marksman, their other tracker, and Strog the apprentice. One thing I realized as I set up these 2 warbands is that with the exception of the illusionary soldier that Caltropos has, they have the exact same soldiers except one has 1 archer and 2 trackers and the other has 2 trackers and 1 archer. Just a reminder for the Warbands missions, the Illusionists have a desire to just get 3 treasures off the board and leave, though they will try to pick up a 4th treasure if they think it's easy. And the Sigilists, their plan is to try to get as many treasures off the board to prevent the artifacts of Frostgrave from falling into the wrong hands. Initiative for the first round goes to Caltropos. For the first round, Caltropos will activate by himself and move up here. From there, he can see down to this ledge right there, and he will cast Imp. He casts on a 13. 8. That's a failure by 5. He will empower that. And there's the Imp that just appeared. Gloven over here will activate with his knight. Gloven will just move to right there. Now, their usual strategy is to cast telekinesis, but that does not work well in this scenario since there's no treasures on the ground. So instead, he's going to cast a spell he's never cast before, which is Banish on that imp. Gloven casts this on a 12. 9. Failed by 3. I don't think he's going to empower that because the imp gets a will save, and they have a +4 to their will, so he'll just let that fail. And their knight will just double move to give Gloven some arrow protection if needed. For the apprentice phase, Moot will cast Push on their marksman. He casts on a 9. The -2 for apprentice, that still succeeds. To see how far he pushes him, this will be Caltropos +10, +2 for the marksman. 12 to 15, so he actually doesn't push him anywhere. Then Moot will move. For Strog, he is going to attempt to cast Power Word. He casts on a 13. 4 minus 2 would be 2. He fails that by 11, but he's carrying a Scroll of Power Word, so he will go ahead and use that to automatically cast the spell. And that Power Word will target the spell Furious Quill, so all spellcasters get a +3 to cast that for the rest of the game. Then he'll just move up here against this wall. For the Illusionist Soldier phase, they will have this Archer double move into contact with that pillar. Now the rules say if a figure touches it, it must immediately fight the column. So I'm thinking that means the column attacks my soldier. It doesn't say they have to use an action to fight it. So even though he double moved, he's still fighting. +2 for the archer, +0 for the column. 12 to 18. And it does damage. He's got light armor, so that deals 7 damage to that archer. Now it doesn't say that the column is engaged with the soldier, so the soldier should be able to move away. And it never says you can actually voluntarily attack it. It just says that when you move in contact with it. So if I wanted that archer to fight it again, he would have to move away from it and then run back into it. At least that's my understanding. The other archer wants to get on this, so he can double move. And he'll get attacked right there. +2 against +0. 20 to 11. That is a hit. He acquires that treasure automatically. It doesn't say he has to pick it up. It just says it immediately gains possession of 1 treasure. Alright, so he is holding that treasure, and I guess we would roll for random encounters like normal. No random encounter there. Next, the ranger will double move over to this ladder. So right there. The real and illusionary knights will do a double move right up to here. Next, the treasure hunter will do a double move to right there. The barbarian will do a double move to right there. Their tracker will do a double move to right there. And lastly, their marksman will double move to right there. For the sigilists, this tracker will run up to that column. That was a single move, and he'll attack +2 against +0. Ooh. He loses, but he doesn't take any damage. For his second movement, I guess he'll just move away, then walk back into it and get attacked again. Same thing, +2, +0. 8, but that's against 18. He takes 6 damage because he's got light armor and a staff. Next, this tracker will move to right there and then fire an arrow at this imp. The imp has +1 fight, but the tracker moved, so +2 against +2 shoot. This shot is a critical hit. That takes out that imp. Next, this marksman will run up this ladder over to here. And from there, he's got a clear shot at this barbarian. And as I look closer, that barbarian is has not quite half covered, so some intervening terrain there. So the barbarian has a +4 fight, +1 for intervening terrain, +1 for movement, against +3 shoot. 18 for the shot, but critical defense there, so no damage. And he is unloaded. We'll turn that around so we know. This archer will try his luck at fighting one of these columns. +2 fight against +0 column. 11 to 2. So the archer wins the combat, so he wins a treasure. Checking for a random encounter. Nope. Next, their barbarian will double move to right there. Their treasure hunter will double move. He could go further, but he'll stay there. And their ranger will double move to right there. All soldiers have gone. There's no longer any monsters on the battlefield, so initiative for the next round. 9 to 16 goes to Caltropos again. Caltropos will move over here and cast Raise Zombie. Casting number 12, he's got a +2 to this because of his workshop. That's successful. And a clone appears right in front of him. For Gloven, he'll activate with this knight. The knight will do a double move into contact with that column. Fight +4 against fight +0. 12 to 18. The column hits him, armor 13, so 5 damage on that knight. For Gloven, he will now run up here, right behind the treasure hunter, and from there he can just barely see that barbarian's head, and he will cast Furious Quill on him. He casts on a 10, he has a +3 because of the power word. So he gets a 4, so he fails by enough to take 1 damage. For Moot, he is going to cast Imp right up onto this ledge here. He casts on a 13 with a -2. 17, that's successful. So that Imp pops up right there. He has to be at least 3 inches away from any soldiers, which he is. After this successful spell, Moot will move over here. Right there. Over to Strog, he'll activate with this tracker. And the tracker will fire an arrow at the Imp. +2 shoot against +1 fight. Shoot of 20. That's armor 10, only 6 health, so that defeats that Imp. So this Imp just keeps popping up and getting taken out. For the tracker's second action, he'll just move away from the pillar, then back into it to make it fight him. +2 against +0. 17, that's a hit, and it gives him a treasure. See if we have a random encounter. Not this time. Strog will now move to right there, and now he will cast Furious Quill on the treasure hunter. Casting number 10, but he's got a +3 for power word, -2 for apprentice. So +1. 7. Only fails by 3. Even though it'll only give him a casting number of 10, he'll empower that for 3 to make it work. So the treasure hunter has a little quill flying around him. He does not get an immediate will save, but he gets that when he activates. But as we're going to the soldier phase, Caltropos will actually have him activate first, so we'll have him do his will save. Against target number 10, he has a +2. 6, so he fails that. He's still affected by the quill. Then he will run over to this column, and it will attack him. Because of the quill, he has +2 against +0. 15 to 18, so he gets hit. 11 armor, so that is 7 damage on the treasure hunter. Next, their tracker will run up and try his luck. +2 against +0. 9 against 15. The tracker with his staff and light armor takes 3 damage. Next up is their barbarian. He'll run up to this pillar, and he'll get attacked. +4 against +0. 9 against 19. He takes 9 damage. Next, this knight will run up, and it will get attacked by the pillar. +4 against +0. 16 to 7. He defeats the pillar and gets the treasure. These pillars up here have been a little feisty, but someone finally got a treasure out of there. Will we get a random encounter this time? Nope, not yet. This illusionary knight will now run up to right there, making sure not to touch the pillar. This archer with the treasure will do a double move to right there. Since I knocked this ranger down, we'll have him go next. He'll come right over here. And from there, you can see their apprentice. Apprentice has light cover, +2 shoot. And Strog has normally a fight +1. He's got light cover for a total of +3. And then there's a movement, so total of +4 against +2 shoot. Ooh, 21. That is 11 damage. And Strog had just empowered that Furious Quill. So Strog actually goes down with that. Slides all the way down. This marksman will double move up this ladder to right there, where you can see a lot of that central battlefield. This archer will move over here next to Moot, and this clone will just stand there as kind of a meat shield. For Gloven soldiers, this tracker will start running away. Single move to right there. From there, you can see this tracker that's up there, and he'll fire an arrow. +2 against +2. The shot is an 18. I said it was a +2, but he moved, so that's actually a +3. So a tie arrow misses. This archer over here is going to run this way, just trying to stay out of the action, to right there on a double move. This marksman here will reload and fire an arrow at this treasure-carrying knight. +3 arrow, +4 fight. 6 for the arrow, 8 for the fight. That arrow misses. Next, this tracker will hop over here, and from there he'll take a shot at Moot. So from here, there's intervening terrain here, and then since Moot's not actually up against this, that would be intervening terrain, not light cover. Shot +2. Moot has +0 for fight, then there's movement and 2 intervening terrain, so +3. Defense is a 14. Shot is a 8. That's a miss. And this ranger will run over here and climb up this. From there, he will also take a shot at Moot, now just with 1 intervening terrain. +2 against +2. Shot is a 13 against a 18. That is also a miss. So Gloven's archers aren't getting much done. Let's see if their warriors have a better chance. We'll start with their treasure hunter. He'll come over here, avoiding the illusionary soldier, to engage the knight and attack. +4 for the treasure hunter. The knight is encumbered, so +3. Treasure hunter gets a 14. Armor 13, so 1 damage to the knight. He will stay in combat. The barbarian, also trying to avoid combat with the illusionary soldier, will come over here and then engage right here. He will attack with support. +6 for the barbarian against +3 for the knight. 15 against 21. So that knight wins. Normally that'd be 11 damage, but he has Gloves of Strength, which give him an additional +2, so 13 damage. And even though the knight is carrying a treasure and he's engaged with 2 soldiers, he is going to stay. He's not going to push that barbarian out of combat. All of the soldiers have gone. There are no monsters, so we'll roll initiative for the next round. Oh, and it goes to Caltropos. To start this round, Caltropos is going to cast Transpose between his clone and this knight. He casts on a 10. 15, that is successful. So the knight and his treasure warp down there. And this clone warps to right there. Gloven will activate with the tracker and the ranger, and I haven't really been using his name, but that's Tolthwain the Hunter. He's going to try to live up to his name and take out Moot. There's really no intervening terrain, and Tolthwain did not move this turn. Moot is a +0 against +2 shoot. That is a 20. That is 10 damage on Moot. Moot has not been injured, so he is down to 1. This tracker will climb up here. And from there, he will shoot at Moot. +2, and then he moved, so +1 fight for Moot. Well, Moot defends that with a critical defense. Gloven will move over here. And from there, he will cast Bones of the Earth onto Moot. Cast on a 13. 7. He will empower that for 6. Now, I thought that Bones of the Earth made it so they couldn't do any actions until they defeated the hand, but all it does is make it where they may not move until they defeat the hand. So Moot will activate and attempt to cast Heal on himself. His casting number is 10 with a -2 to the roll. 6. So that counts as a 4. So he failed that by 6. So he takes 1 point of damage and dies. For the Sigilists, Strog the Apprentice has fallen, so there is no apprentice phase over here. To Caltropos' soldier phase, this tracker will step away, then move back into contact with the column to get attacked. +2 against +0. 7 to 2. The tracker won the combat, so that means he gets the treasure. First, let's see if a random monster appears. Yes. Encounter level 11, level 1, and we have a 11 again. 4 giant rats. We've got our 4 giant rats. Let's see where they appear. 16. Since I number my board starting with 1 through 5 that way, 16 will put them right here. So they're not strung, but that could spell some bad news for Caltropos and his treasure-carrying knight. So this tracker earned that treasure, and he will use his second action to move a half move down this ramp. Next, we'll have this archer with this treasure just run off the board here. Then this ranger is going to fire an arrow at Gloven. He's got a clear shot there. +2 shot, +3 fight. Shot of 8. That's a miss. Next, this archer will take a shot at this tracker. It's a clear shot. +2 against +2. 16. 16 +2 is 18. Reroll the one that fell on the floor. That is not a successful defense, so 18 against 11 armor, 7 damage on that tracker. After the shot, he will run over here by his friend. So in case the tracker dies, he can pick up that treasure, or he can just stand there as a shield. Next, this treasure hunter will activate. He will try to break the Furious Quill spell. Gets a +2 to this. Target number 10. Success, the spell is broken. This treasure hunter will now do a double move down here of staying away from those archer guys and come down and engage Gloven. Then the marksman over here will fire an arrow at this tracker, trying to finish him off. +3 shot, +2 defense. That's a miss. He'll use the second action to reload. Then this barbarian is going to come over here and attack this knight with support of the illusionary soldier. +6 against +4. 16 to 16, that's a tie, so they both deal damage. 16 on the knight, +2 for damage. That's a total of 5 damage on the knight. The barbarian, however, takes 6 damage. He was at 5, so the barbarian goes down. That knight was at 7, so he's still alive with 2. This knight will do a double move over here to attract all the rats to himself. For the Sigilist soldiers, this marksman will reload and fire an arrow at that tracker. +3 shot, +1 defense since he's encumbered. 18 against 19, barely defends that. This tracker will also fire an arrow at that tracker. +2 shot, +1 defense. 14 for the shot, 8 for the defense. That is 3 damage on the tracker. Then the tracker will hop down and move over here and snap into combat there. Tolthwain the hunter will fire an arrow at that red archer down there. +2 against +2. 11 for the arrow, doesn't get past the armor. Tolthwain will then hop down and engage this treasure hunter to support his wizard. Up here, this knight will attack the illusionary knight. +4 against +4. The illusionary knight wins, no damage, but he's still there. Next, this treasure hunter will attack the zombie. +6 with support against +0. 19, that defeats the zombie. Then the treasure hunter will run down here towards this wizard. And this barbarian will follow. He can get close enough to snap into combat. Bad news there for Caltropos. Wanting to make sure they secure these treasures, this tracker will run off the board. Over here, this archer can't quite get to the edge of the board. And just realize these rats will activate as one, so they will group activate into combat with this knight, which could be bad. The knight has fight +3 since he's encumbered. Usually rats are fight +0, but he's got support from 3 buddies, so +3 versus +6. Alright, 6 is 11, no damage from the first one. Second one attacks the same way. That's a 21 against 18. One of the rats dies. Third rat attacks, now with a +4. +4 for the rat is 21 against 19. So that is a hit, dealing 8 damage to the knight. The knight is down to 3 health. Attacking again, +4 rat, +3 knight. 11, that's enough. They have 6 armor, so that kills one more of the rats. New round, we'll roll for initiative. Goes to Caltropos. So Caltropos is in a bad spot here. He's going to go ahead and attack. +2 against +4. 16 to 15. He wins. That enemy barbarian was down to 1, so he takes out a barbarian. Caltropos will now run over here, snap into combat with this rat. For Gloven, he will activate with his Ranger Tolthwain, who will attack the Treasure Hunter. With support, this is +4 against +4. And it goes to the Treasure Hunter with a 22. That is 10 damage on the previously uninjured Ranger, bringing him down to 2. He'll push the Ranger out of combat, but the Ranger will just move back in to support his Wizard. And now Gloven will attack with support. +5 for the Wizard against +4. Ooh, 22 against 19. So the Treasure Hunter goes down, and Gloven will run 6 move units over to here and hop down. Currently, this is the only column that still has a treasure inside it. Over here, this archer will run up and engage here. That looks kind of ridiculous, but he will attack with support. +4 against +2. 10, that doesn't get past his armor, but he can push him out of combat, which he will do. Now this tracker will activate, and he will fire an arrow at the enemy tracker. +2 against +2. Shot is a 15. That deals 4 damage to the blue tracker. This hooded tracker is now down to 1. And this guy will slide down there, trip his way across over to right here. The Ranger will now fire at that tracker. +2 against +2. Failure. The tracker will now run down here, hop down, end his turn right there. The Marksman will now fire at that tracker. +3 shot against +2 defense. Still no luck. And instead of reloading, he will run down this ladder to right there. Next, the Knight will attack this rat here. No one gets support. Knight is +3 against +0. 11 to 7 against 6 armor. That's enough to kill that rat. Just 1 rat left. And the Illusionary Knight will not attack, which brings us to the Sigilist's turn. And the Knight will attack the Illusionary Knight. +4 against +4. And the Illusionary Knight wins again. He'll stay in combat. This tracker will fire an arrow at that tracker. +2 shoot, +1 defense. And no luck on the arrow. He will then go ahead and engage this tracker. Then this Ranger will run over here. Tolthwain will try to hunt, see if he's successful, firing an arrow there. +2 against +2 because he moved. 12. That would be 1 damage. This Treasure Hunter will now run over here and attack this last column. +4 against +0. Success. See if a random monster pops up. Nope. The last treasure has been claimed. The Marksman will reload and fire an arrow at this archer. +3 against +2. Another critical defense. To the monsters, the last remaining rat will attack the character with the least health, which is the Knight. The Knight has support, he's encumbered, so +5 against +0. And that last rat is dead. The Knight successfully takes out 4 rats while encumbered. Rolling initiative for the next round. Alright, goes to Caltropos. Since Caltropos' plan is to just get 3 treasures and get off the board, they're not even going to try to challenge that one. He has no problem with spamming spells, though, so he'll try to cast Heal on the Knight. 3. He needed a 10. He takes 1 point of damage. And I forgot to say he's activating with this knight, so they'll both run off the board. For Gloven, he will just run up here, come over here, and add support. For the soldier phase, since this tracker can't quite get off the board, he will instead run in here to give himself some cover. This marksman will reload and fire an arrow at Tuthwain. There's one piece of intervening terrain. +3 against +3. And the crossbow bolt misses. This ranger on a single move can come up and engage. He'll snap into combat right there and attack with support. +4 against +2. Success, that's 21. That is 9 damage. And that tracker was down to 1, so he goes down. At this point, for Gloven, realizing they're fighting an illusionary soldier, the one treasure that they might be able to add to what they already have is pretty well guarded by all these ranged soldiers here. So they're just going to have this treasure hunter run off the board and let Caltropos' men escape with that and call this a battle. I think Caltropos and his warband did pretty well in this battle. They managed to get the 3 treasure tokens that they always try to get. Their combination of push and transpose didn't work too well in this scenario, just with some of the height on the battlefield made it hard to push someone across level ground. But they still managed to get their goal. They did have 3 soldiers that fell in combat, so we'll roll some survival checks, starting with the treasure hunter. He's fine. The barbarian, he is fine. And Moot the apprentice. 3. 3 is a permanent injury on the apprentice. We'll roll to see what the injury is. 4. 4 is a smashed leg. Smashed leg leaves him with a -1 penalty to his move. Now we'll roll for their 3 treasures. 2, 16, and 18. D20 times 20 gold crowns. 80 gold crowns in a grimoire. 120 gold crowns in a grimoire. For the D20 times 20 gold, 13 times 20 is 260. For their 2 grimoires, column 2, number 8, column 2, number 18. 2 number 8 is telekinesis, and 218 is grenade. For experience points, Caltropos had 1 failed spell that caused them damage for 5. They had 5 successful spells for 50. They retrieved 3 treasure tokens for 150. And they defeated those 4 rats for 20, for a total of 225 experience points. The special rules for this scenario state that each treasure grants an additional 20 gold crowns, so they got a total of 520 gold crowns and grimoires of telekinesis and grenade. Gloven's team didn't do the greatest that battle. They relied really heavily on the telekinesis spell, which was pretty much useless in this game. They never had a chance to cast it. And as such, they struggled knowing what to cast every turn. And as a result, they only pulled 3 of the treasure tokens off the board. And they ended up with 3 casualties. So let's roll to see how these soldiers are doing. Starting with the tracker. He's fine. The barbarian. He's fine. And Strog the apprentice. 19. He is also fine. Now that we know all of their soldiers survived, let's roll to see what treasures they found. 3, 11, and 20. 3 is D20 times 25 gold. 11 is 40 gold crowns and a magical item. And 20 is 200 gold crowns and a grimoire. We'll roll up their D20 times 25 gold. 18. So that is a whopping 450 gold crowns. Roll for their magic item. 3. Nice, that is a Staff of Power with 3 charges. And to roll for their grimoire. Column 3, number 18. Column 3, number 18 is Embed Enchantment. For out-of-game spells, the Sigilists will cast Write Scroll on a 10, and they have a +1 because of the scriptorium that's in their library. For Gloven, failure, and for Strog the Apprentice, he also fails, so no more scrolls of this battle. And with their library base, let's find out if they find any scrolls or grimoires. 6. Nope, they needed a 17 or higher to find anything. For experience points, they had 1 failed spell that caused them damage for 5. They only had 2 successful spells for 20. They recovered 3 treasures for 150. And they defeated those 2 summoned imps for 10, for a total of only 185 experience points. But due to the additional 20 gold crowns for each treasure token, they received a whopping 750 total gold crowns, as well as that Staff of Power and the Grimoire of Embed Enchantment. Well, I thought it was kind of funny when I first set up this battle when I realized that the 2 Warbands soldiers were almost exactly the same. But then as the battle went on, even with 10 total ranged soldiers between the 2 Warbands, it seemed like none of them could hit anything. And they did a better job securing treasure than they did shooting at their targets. For Caltropos' Warband, I thought they did okay. Their usual push and transpose combo didn't really work in this scenario. Just the way the terrain was set up, there weren't a lot of straightaways where a soldier could get pushed really, really well. And then the way the pillars were located, they couldn't really get lined up right for that. They did successfully cast Imp twice, but both of their imps were immediately dispatched. That was one successful thing the other Warband's archers actually did, was take out those imps. So the imps weren't too successful either. And with Caltropos' ranged soldiers, besides their ranger taking out Strog the Apprentice, it seemed like they weren't really able to hit much, and they did do a good job of kind of providing covering fire, so they were able to get a couple treasures off, but they were kind of disappointing, to be honest. I thought it was pretty cool that their knight killed all 4 of those rats. He almost died in the process. And then it was also kind of funny that this is the second battle in a row where he has secured a treasure. So not the guy you would usually expect to be pulling treasure off, but it works well with the transpose spell. But in the end, Caltropos succeeded in his mission of pulling 3 treasures off the board. And with that, they found a fair amount of gold crowns and 2 grimoires that could be pretty useful in telekinesis and grenade. The only downside is that Moot ended up with a crushed leg, so Caltropos has to decide if he'll just keep Moot in his warband as he is, or if he needs to make another clone and bring out Apprentice 3.0. Gloven's team seemed to have trouble figuring out what to do in this scenario. It didn't help that Strog the Apprentice got taken out pretty early and wasn't able to really do anything except for use a scroll. And for Gloven, he usually relies heavily on the telekinesis spell to move treasures around. But since all the treasures were locked up in these pillars, that spell was completely useless in this quest. And as a result, he only ended up casting 2 spells successfully in the whole game. And it's made me realize this warband is really kind of laser focused on that telekinesis, and if it's not working, then they're really not working either. As far as his soldiers go, their marksman was able to get a pretty good vantage point early on, but he just didn't seem to be able to capitalize on that position and didn't really do a whole lot from there. With their melee soldiers, they got really clogged up in the middle of the board by an illusionary soldier and a zombie from the other team, and so they weren't really able to do a whole lot. And their barbarian, once he was able to break free from that, managed to catch up to Caltropos, and Caltropos, the only wizard in this campaign that hasn't increased his fight stat, Caltropos actually took out the barbarian in combat. So, their soldiers didn't do a whole lot. Their treasure hunter was able to break free of all the congestion and get to one of the towers to secure a treasure, which was good because if he hadn't got there when he did, that treasure might have actually ended up in Caltropos' hands. And even though things didn't go the best for the Sigilists on the battlefield, the 3 treasure tokens they pulled off gave them a fair amount of gold crowns and a staff of power, and none of their soldiers were badly injured or died. So they at least came out with some good things from it, even though they didn't reach their goal of trying to pull off more than 3 treasure tokens. As far as the scenario goes, I thought it was pretty good. There was just a few times where I wasn't exactly sure what the intent was in the rules. With the columns, as near as I can tell word for word from the rules, is that they'd be placed as treasure tokens, which means you'd set up the board and then you would put the columns around, which could end up with some weird things like columns being up on top of towers and things. That's why I went ahead and just set up the board as I did, so it would look like a complex temple rather than just this weird conglomeration of towers coming out of the sides of buildings and things. The other thing that seemed kind of weird was that the columns attacked you when you ran into them, that you wouldn't actually use an action to attack it. So it seemed kind of weird. You could run into it, it would attack you, then you could just, if you lost the combat, you could step back and then move back into it and attack. But I did like that when you beat the tower, that it gave you the token immediately rather than having to spend another action after you've already been out there fighting to pick it up. It just came right to you. And so I thought that was kind of a neat twist on how to acquire a treasure token, and I think that was good. Just one quick pro tip is that if you're going to play this scenario, make sure you are not relying heavily on the telekinesis spell. And those are my thoughts about the scenario, the Complex Temple. So now all 10 scenarios from the core rulebook have been completed, and if you're watching this close to when the video was published, I will be taking a break from the 4 warbands that have been in this solo campaign so that I can start a new campaign going through the Dark Alchemy and Perilous Dark campaigns. By the time I'm done with that endeavor, Frostgrave 2nd edition should be available. And I don't know how the new rules, the updated rules, will affect my current warbands and the spells they have. And I also don't know what my schedule will be 2 or 3 months down the road. So I don't want to give any promises of what these warbands will be doing, but I would like to take them through some of the other expansion book scenarios, the scenarios from the 2nd edition book, and I want to bring these wizards back to the table in the future. And that's all for this video. If you like what we're doing here at Dad's Playing Games, feel free to click like or subscribe down below so that you can keep up with all the content that Dad's Playing Games is creating. And also you can leave a comment to let me know your thoughts on this scenario, this video, and maybe what you'd like to see these warbands doing down the road. And with that, I'm Alan with Dad's Playing Games, and we'll see you on our next video.